All right, it is April 30th, and we are doing Woozy Tuesday. So, this is the Woozy, one of the ancient military texts. We're in chapter about choosing generals, verse 5. We just spoke about considering in battle, a major consideration is to locate the enemy commander and make a thorough assessment of his character, right? So, whether he's foolish and gullible or led by rich and greedy or whoever he's led by, it basically says to take that to an account and study the enemy leadership. And so in verse 5, Marcus Wu asked, if our two armies are facing one another and I do not know how skilled the enemy commander is, what should I do? And Wu Qi replied, choose a brave, lower ranking soldier to lead an attack of light troops on the enemy to test them. Retreat rather than pursue the enemy troops and observe how they react. If they appear well disciplined and move in unison and pretend not to be able to keep up the pursuit or do not press their advantage when there is one, then such a force must be led by a competent general. Do not engage such a force. If, on the other hand, your enemy is a loud rabble with uncoordinated flags and troops who move about as they please, use an odd assortment of weapons, and rush to pursue or fall upon any possible target, then you know that their leader is a fool and no number of soldiers will be enough to save him from capture. So that's very interesting about assessing the competence of an enemy. And just as they have studied Sun Tzu's Art of War, most likely, they do not pursue, just like Sun Tzu says, like, do not pursue the retreating enemy, lest it be a trap. And so this is Wu Zi saying pretty much the same thing. So next is going to be chapter 5, Adapting in the Field. So very interesting title, Adapting in the Field. All right. Let's go over to now The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman for April 30th. And let's find out how we can get Western philosophy and Eastern warfare strategy to come together. What is in keeping with your character? Right? We were just talking about the enemy general's character. Just as what is considered rational or irrational differs for each person, in the same way, what is good or evil or useful or useless differs for each person. This is why we need education, so that we might learn how to adjust our preconceived notions of the rational and irrational in harmony with nature. In sorting this out, we don't simply rely on our estimate of the value of external things, but also apply the rule of what is in keeping with one's character. Epictetus Discourses 1.2.5 to 7. It is easy to get wrapped up in our own opinions of things. It's as if we're adhering to invisible scripts, following instructions or patterns we don't even understand. I like the use of patterns here. I wrote about patterns over 10 to 15 years ago. The more you question these scripts and the more you subject them to the rigorous test of your education, the more you'll be your own compass. You'll have convictions and thoughts that are your own and belong to no one else. Character is a power defense in a world that would love to be able to seduce you, buy you, tempt you, and change you. If you know what you believe and why you believe it, you'll avoid poisonous relationships, toxic jobs, fair weather friends, and any number of ills that afflict people who haven't thought through their deepest concerns. That's your education. That's why you do this work. Part 2, the discipline of action, coming up next. Very interesting. So, adapting in the field and the discipline of action coming up for May. Okay. And I love how this, like, so it's easy to get wrapped up in your own opinions of things. It's like we're adhering to these invisible scripts. And so that's like being the enemy general who sends his troops to pursue instead of pulling them back. He's not that smart. He's a rabble rouser, as he's they're rabble and they're loud and they just chase down the closest thing, right? So if they're not disciplined, and so that's kind of what these patterns that I sense and that I've journaled about, kind of, we don't understand them, right? Following instructions or patterns we don't even understand it. So that's the thing, whose pattern, whose drumbeat, right? What pattern are you adhering to? Are you noticing the positive patterns or the negative patterns? Because they spin their patterns, right? Like they make this frequency, this wave, they go in circles, then they can circle up or they can circle down. And a lot of times if you're not paying attention to your patterns, you're giving into, metaphorically, like the devil's patterns, right? The sin, the things that are meant to hold you back, then you are just like that general who pursues in battle when it's not the smart thing